This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
We're grateful to have you here with us on this first episode back following the August long weekend. We recognize not everybody, not every province, maybe not every employer recognizes the August long, and so maybe you're already one day into your week. But we're grateful to be back in studio on this August 5th. In just a second, Sharan Kaur, there's a lot to catch up on. Obviously, the summer has kind of felt a little bit different in the sense that there's really been no break in the news cycle, and perhaps in part because of the by-election coming up in Battle River Crowfoot. Pierre Poilievre trying to get his way into the House of Commons so he can officially be the leader of the opposition. It hasn't really felt like politics has slowed down either, but developments in the past 24 hours, including for the first time, Canadian aircraft, those big Hercules aircraft dropping humanitarian aid into Gaza for the very first time, about 10 worth, which sort of feels like a drop in the bucket when you assess or get a sense of the aid needs there and what has been withheld from Palestinians, many of them experiencing quite literally starvation. Benjamin Netanyahu defying calls for a ceasefire, suggesting that Israel will fully occupy the Gaza Strip, including areas with hostages. Canada's Prime Minister responding to this in just a second. We're going to get Sharan Kaur's take on that. Plus, we want to get to some follow-up on some of the recent episodes that we've had some really powerful and meaningful emails from Mel and Cheryl, for example, following what I thought was a really important episode with Mary Jane James and Kristen Rayworth, this on the heels of that Hockey Canada verdict. We're going to get to that as well. Plus, we'll be taking a look at the Real Talk live chat, seeing what you have to say. I guess the point I'm getting at is this is far from a sleepy August, and well, that's good news for us, and I hope good news for you if you're tuning into the talk show. We sure appreciate you downloading this wherever you get your podcasts or watching us on YouTube. In our feature interview today, presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, a pleasure to welcome back a longtime pundit. You see her on the national news sites. You read her work in national papers and op-eds. She's a former senior advisor to Finance Minister Bill Morneau and a wonderful friend of this show, Sharan Kaur. It's been a while since we last chatted with you, Sharan. Want to let you know how much we appreciate you making time for us. How has the summer been for you thus far? Do you get the same sense as what I'm describing? It's just been like pedal to the metal with really no break?
Yeah, it kind of feels like we're in this prolonged, intense, crazy year. And I think for those of us who work in the space where we're consumed by the trade wars, what's happening in the Middle East, like there's no turning it off, right? So I would definitely say while the summer has been a little tad bit slower than the usual time of the year, nothing has stopped, and it's kind of been pedal to the metal, keep working and go, go, go.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, you mentioned the trade wars. Donald Trump, now 35% tariffs on, and I will say, and I will touch on this in a little bit, it's a relatively small portion of Canada's exports that'll be impacted by this increase in tariffs up to 35%. But if you're working in steel, aluminum, and lumber, you really care about this. I have to ask you, just out of the gates, pretty significant, I think, to see Canadian aircraft making these humanitarian drops in Gaza. Obviously, it's a nightmare scenario there and has been for quite some time. There's mounting pressure for a ceasefire, and Israel, essentially, by way of Benjamin Netanyahu saying, hell no, they're deciding on full occupation of the Gaza Strip. You're shaking your head. Where are you at on this one?
Listen, I really struggle with this topic because I've been pretty outspoken in terms of what my views are. And what I've noticed, and I think society as a whole has noticed, is that it's become about like absolutism. You have to take one side or the other. And if you take one side, you're being called names for the other. And I've always been of the view that this war has led to an intense amount of anti-Semitism here in Canada because of people who have perversed the cause in terms of being protesters or an activist. And so all of that is horrible, what we're seeing here. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be able to call out with what's happening in Gaza and in Israel. I'm not a fan of Benjamin Netanyahu. I think he's had an agenda from day one, and he is using this as an opportunity to fulfill his agenda. And we're seeing that now with word of full annexation. it is a hard conversation. It is hard to look at these images and not feel like we as society have failed. There's nothing left in Gaza. It is complete destruction. And having spent time in the Middle East with a lot of people whose families escaped the Palestinian region many, many years ago, and watching them suffer through it as well has been really challenging, because what we hear here from a lot of people is this generalization that everyone in Gaza or West Bank that is of Palestinian descent is a terrorist. And here in Canada, I had a friend of mine not too long ago send me a note saying, listen, hey, I adore you, I love you, but we don't agree on the Middle East. And I just want you to know my child was accosted while he was at a Jewish overnight camp by strangers who drove up and screamed at him, death to Jews. And it was horrible. Like, no 12-year-old should be going through that. But also I thought it was, and of course, like, I'm so apologetic that her child in our country is going through that, but also frustrated to kind of be told that it's because of your views that you think there should be aid going there, that it's like because of what you say, this is what's happening here. And you know, I had another conversation with another very big advocate for I would not say for the Netanyahu administration, but for what they're doing. And I had said, listen, we see Israel has been able to go out and assassinate people in Iran, find Yahya Sinwar, plant these bomb-like pagers on people. Why has Netanyahu not put that same attention in getting the hostages back? And what I'm told is, well, you know, because Hamas is sitting right on top of them. And I don't believe for one second that Israel, the IDF, doesn't have the ability to find a way to get in there and get the hostages. And I'm sure it's complex, but what we're doing as a result is collective punishment to everyone else. And by default, valuing one set of lives more than the other. And it's hard to have that conversation with people because it's nuanced. And I think we should feel horrible. The images of one of the hostages last week was absolutely horrible. And no one seems to be willing to have these conversations and nuances. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, and people are reflecting that in our live chat this morning as well. Like Marc just says, this is a tough topic. And, you know, I feel like, you know, sometimes, you know, we sort of like pursue nuance as much as possible here. We say that, you know, this show's going to live in the gray areas. But a lot of times, you know, and for understandable reasons, I think to a certain degree, people see things in black and white. You know, when you're saying like, you know, this is, and whatever the issue that you're talking about, you know, this is a threat to our existence, or this group of people does not want our group of people to exist anymore, then obviously, you know, the temperature just ramps up. I want to ask you about Marc Carney and his statement about a week ago. But first, let me ask you about Montreal's Mayor Jeremy Levi. Interesting tweet over the weekend. I'm sure you saw this, right?
Yeah.
Tweets,
Mayor Hampstead, yes.
Yeah, tweets the mayor, if the rumors are true, then good. It's about time. Mayor says Israel should move forward with full occupation and annexation of Gaza. It's been nearly 2 years. And if the Palestinians truly wanted peace, they would have handed over the hostages long ago, but they haven't because they choose war. Israel has every right to act decisively. No more half measures, no more waiting. The world needs to understand. No more arguing, no more explanations. Full throttle, no apologies. Your thoughts?
Like, where do we even start? It's like, listen, this is a mayor of a very small community in Quebec.
Hampstead, right?
In Hampstead. And like the majority population there is a Jewish population. And I understand that he is advocating for his constituents and his community, but in what world is that acceptable? This is not the first tweet. I have some serious concerns with the type of tweets that this man has put out there. There have been flat out racist, flat out Islamophobic. What he is calling for is full annexation, is ethnic cleansing. I know people that are close to him that have told me that he has openly made extremely racist comments towards the Muslim community and population. And I find it not even ironic, but like disheartening that someone who is advocating for a certain community is so, and that is facing anti-Semitism and hate and racism, is so openly saying stuff like this. It is unfortunately a reality that we don't talk about too much because everyone's afraid of upsetting the Jewish community. Like, no one should be okay with that statement. It is exactly, and I posted something in response to that yesterday as well, because it's basically full out ethnic cleansing is what he is saying. It is completely going in there doing exactly what a lot of people who are critical of Netanyahu have said he's going to do. And you'll notice in his tweet, he doesn't differentiate between Hamas and Palestinians. And that is the tone and tenor he is doing purposefully. That is a purposeful statement because people like him have actively gone out and labeled all Palestinians as Hamas. So this type of nonsense is just fueling the hate. And I find it disgusting. I find it's like you're feeding into colonization type of rhetoric. And I hate that we're seeing this from a Canadian mayor, despite how it doesn't matter how small of a town he represents. This is coming from an elected official here in Canada. It's disgusting.
Yeah, it was just like for me, it was just like I mean, I understand, I guess, if you're, President Trump and you're describing a scenario where like the Americans are involved in a military offensive and it's loaded language and you're the commander in chief, it's like this guy's like a suburban Montreal mayor with really, I don't know if I say no skin in the game. Obviously everybody kind of has their connections and I'll respect that, but like just the wording, I think what struck me, like no more arguing, no more explanations, full throttle, no apologies. It's kind of like, holy shit. We don't see that language a lot in Canada.
No. And he's feeding it. If you go back through his previous posts, like this is not a man who represents all Canadians. This is a man who is fighting one cause, and his cause is to fight for Israel here domestically. In his rhetoric, he is very pro-conservative in his views, and this is probably one of the more milder posts that he's put out there. He has been extremely racist and Islamophobic in his posts, and it's sad to see that because in a time when we're trying to end the divide, he is just fueling it with this. So like, I find it disappointing, but not surprising.
Yeah, I see he's obviously looking to pick a fight or doing his best he can to get under the skin of Anthony Housefather, obviously a valued and prominent member of Marc Carney's federal government, Liberal government, and a Jewish member of parliament, obviously. And I got to ask you about this interesting statement. That's the word I'll choose to use. I'll let you use whatever adjectives you want. But when Marc Carney makes the statement on the 30th of July out of Ottawa, Canada has long been committed to a two-state solution, an independent, viable, and sovereign Palestinian state living side by side with the state of Israel in peace and security. Goes on to argue why Canada intends to recognize the state of Palestine at the 80th session of the UN General Assembly coming up this fall in September of 2025. It obviously made waves. Macron did the same thing in France, but your thoughts on the move by Carney, why he made it, and some of the fallout?
I think a lot of us who have been pro two-state solution know that any hope of that is probably gone at this point. But I personally thought it was an important statement. Again, everyone is looking at the situation between Israel and Gaza as kind of absolutism in terms of one side or the other. We see Israel, Netanyahu has openly said that area is considered the greater Israel area. But what people, as much as we can't solve that issue here in Canada, the public sentiment towards what is happening, I would say, has shifted. For the longest time, there has been a very strong narrative focus on Israel is doing this to defend themselves. And I think anyone with eyes or understanding of how war can operate, this has gone long beyond. This is way more than retaliation. We're at the stage of retribution here. So I think it's just the general public is starting to see that. And I think even as a government, Canada has taken a pretty steadfast position in supporting Israel as, I know we like to call them a democratic ally. Israel is probably one of the more democratic countries in the region. It is not a total democracy. Ask any Palestinian who lives in Israel. It is not. So that's something that I really struggle when people say it is a democratic country. But the public sentiment here has changed, right? People are watching these footages of children starving, food not getting in there, and we're gonna, like, I hear from a lot of people saying, no, UN trucks are getting in. There's so many airplanes that are dropping food down there. It is not enough. People are kind of in that position where they are just going and grabbing everything they can. Like, this is last survival. And there was a lot of talk about a photo that was shared of a boy who was doing not well at all. And I think it was the New York Times or whoever it was posted the photo and then corrected it, because he actually had an illness of some sort. And I got into multiple, arguments actually with friends who said, this is propaganda. Look at the boy next to him. He's clearly healthy. And I had to stop and say, there's nothing about this image that says healthy about anyone in it. Sure, the young boy who looks like he's starving has a health issue, but do you think this war is not also part of why he is in that position? So this whole argument about people are not starving. There's a prominent Israeli activist who posted this post about how we should airdrop Ozempic because people there are actually overweight, and this is all propaganda. And this is, I think, what people here are starting to see as a shifting rhetoric around food who kind of feel sorry for. And I think Carney and the government I think they were right in what they did with the statement. What I find frustrating is people coming out and saying you've rewarded Hamas. You have to understand the region in order to understand how stuff like this happens. Palestine, Gaza, it's never been given the chance to excel. It's never been given the same opportunities to become a developed country, a state, like Israel, for example. It doesn't have nearly any of the resources they do. And a lot of that has to do with kind of the history of how the region came about. And I know that we have to always denounce terrorism. We have to denounce what Hamas did on October 7th, but we have to also recognize that people have had their water restricted, their electricity restricted, access to the region restricted. So Israel has played a very big part of why they have not been able to develop. And I think it's really important that they be acknowledged as a state. And without Hamas there, and how that happens, I think the Arab world has to come together and kind of help get them to a place where they are a functioning society, but it's not going to happen for a very long time.
I just want to let our audience know, coming up in a couple of episodes from now, so it'll be August 7th. That's a Thursday. We're going to welcome Raja Khoury and Jeffrey Wilkinson to the show. They're the authors of The Wall Between, What Jews and Palestinians Don't Want to Know About Each Other. It's obviously a book that's been recognized, I think, for driving important conversations, and we'll look forward to connecting with them in a couple of episodes from now. We're hanging out with Sharan Kaur in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. All I know, I can't even remember how this audio found its way to me, but I heard a radio interview that you did just a few days ago, and you were kind of mixing it up with Elias Makos. I don't know if you even want me to bring it up, but kind of the premise that your whole face, just like your jaw just like clenched when I brought this up. The context of this was Bill 21 in Quebec, which I think most Canadians are familiar with. It obviously, generally speaking, prohibits the expression of religious allegiance or faith, most notably impacting, I think probably Muslim faith followers. I would say for the most part, at least that's where I see all the attention, although I suppose that crucifixes and yarmulkes and the like would also qualify. What kicked up this firestorm, and what happened for our audience members that didn't hear that interview, that didn't hear that fiery exchange?
Man, I don't even know how to begin because I'm so disappointed in the fact that there is somebody on a network that I appear on regularly that has these kind of views. I guess for the listeners, the topic was we were kind of discussing the place where courts have when it comes to political decisions. And like we started off by talking about in Ontario where a court has ruled out that it's unconstitutional for Doug Ford and his team to remove bike lanes. And then moving on to the fact that the Supreme Court has seen a record number of intervenor statuses for the case of Bill 21 in Quebec, which is their secularism bill. And I kind of came in it with two different perspectives that I think in Ontario, Doug Ford ran a campaign on getting rid of bike lanes to a certain extent. And I think that the court might have overstepped that. I support bike lanes, but I think from a perspective of voter rights, that one was a bit off for me. But I think on the Bill 21 in Quebec, we had this conversation where I have a pretty strong view on it. I think Bill 21 is racist. I think it is inherently a racist bill, specifically intended to target ethnic minorities, religious minorities, particularly women who wear hijabs. I think this is all cloak and daggers for the Quebec government to basically find a way to minimize Muslims in the community. And I got into this argument because this other individual who was on the panel basically, and I'm sure the audio is somewhere online, but he basically started down a path of saying women would have more access to opportunities if they didn't have to wear a hijab. Basically said that women from Algeria, Iran, thank him in Quebec all the time for what Quebec is doing. And like, it was a very racist conversation. It was a very discriminatory conversation. And it actually proves the point of what this bill actually is about. It's not about removing religious symbols in workplaces. It's about, it's a state-sanctioned way to discriminate people. And and you know what? I was fiery because I think that it is a very racist bill, and I was making it very difficult for him to have a say on it, because what he did have to say should be condemned. And I think what we're seeing in Quebec specifically with this bill is that, and I talked to a lot of folks, a lot of conservatives from Quebec who have told me that they don't want to see visible Muslims, religious Muslims, in positions of authority or power. And I'm sorry, but that is against people's Charter of Rights. If you are a Muslim and you live in Quebec and you can't be a teacher, that is a limitation to your employment based on the fact that you, for example, might wear a hijab. And it's not just merely about maintaining a secular state. It is essentially a form of state-sanctioned exclusion that will disproportionately affect religious minorities, which are particularly women in hijabs. And the bill is falsely presented as a way for equality, and it's not. Like, it's trying to show neutrality, but it's not. People talk about Quebec culture and how Quebec is secular, but what you are actually doing is eliminating people's freedom to practice religion. And the fact that people are so openly now saying that it's because they don't want Muslim people praying in the streets. And there's already bylaws in place that if you are praying in the middle of a road, you shouldn't be doing that. The bylaw should be dealing with it. By what Bill 21 is doing is, it is full out racism. It is full out discrimination. And I think Quebecers are becoming far more open about speaking about it. And that's what this guy did on the radio. He was pretty open by saying, we want to give more women in hijabs opportunities. What they don't realize is that some faiths don't, if someone is a Muslim and wears a hijab, they're more likely to want to do what's right in their faith than to take that job. I come from the Sikh background, where my father and my brother are visible minorities, both who wear turbans, both who would not allow to be in certain jobs in Quebec. And guess what? They're just as Canadian as everyone else is.
We're talking to Sharan Kaur. We've got Patrick Lachance in our live chat, powered by Park Power. Don't know anything about Patrick. Grateful that he's here contributing to the conversation, not just based on his surname. I'm assuming he's from Quebec because, number one, he told us to ignore, I think he described him as the asshole mayor near Montreal. He says nobody in Quebec respects him, but he's firing back at you on Bill 21. He says Bill 21 is excellent. He says Quebecers, he says the Quebecois are the least religious people in the entire world statistically. He says let them make their own decisions about that. He says religion, and I want to give you, obviously, Sharon, a chance to respond to this. He says religion is not a race. He says this is a quiet revolution. What would you say if you and Patrick were chatting right now?
So, Patrick, what I would say is that religion is not a race, but if we put our critical thinking hats on, religion does tie into some people's race. Religion can tie into people's culture. And for example, in the Sikh religion, men wear turbans. It is part of their practice. It is part of what they believe in respecting and protecting their hair. It is actually fundamentally part of how they live their life. So for a Sikh man to go, if he was a teacher in Quebec, to take off the turban is actually a very, it's like a very, I'm trying to think of the best word to say, but it's kind of like a very deeply troubling thing for them to do, right? Because it's part of their practice and their beliefs. So while Quebec is not religious, I think people are religious. And I think there's ways where Quebec can put in rules that allow people to still practice, because at the end of the day, you're still part of Canada. We still have a Charter of Rights here. People still are allowed to practice freely. Maybe it'll make some Quebecers more comfortable if it's not too obvious in their face. But at the end of the day, you are Canadian first, Quebecer second.
Do you remember this? Obviously, this video, I'm showing it right now. This is Jagmeet Singh. He posted this. This is back on April 23rd. But you remember this? He said, I don't gatekeep my beard and hair care, so here it is. And he talked about it. He went on in this video and subsequent videos to show people like how he gets ready and how he ties his turban and that sort of a thing. And I thought, like, number one, it was just really informative and it like humanized him in a big way. But also, I would imagine there was some risk. Like, I would imagine that like members of his faith community and others may not have thought that that was an appropriate thing to do on camera. Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, totally. So this one's an interesting one. I think Jagmeet Singh played a really big part in kind of our Canadian society and educating people about who Sikhs are. But I could tell you someone like people in my family did not like that video because they kind of thought he was using it for clout. And he kind of did, right? That's kind of his vibe. That's what he does. But you kind of have to weigh it, right? You have to weigh it to like, he's actually educating people. You'll have so many people saying, what's underneath your turban? Why don't you cut your hair? Now, not all Sikhs practice in the same way as others do, right? Like I am not a religious individual, but I do respect my family members and others who are religious and keep their hair and don't cut their hair. And it's part of the tenets, right, of the religion is to not cut your hair and to keep it clean. So what he's showing in the video is how he maintains his hair, and the turban is kind of like this crown that kind of keeps it together, and it's part of in the Sikh tradition and culture of being warriors. So I think from an educational part, he speaks to people in a way that they'll understand it. If you ask probably the boomers, like my family members, who were just like, why is he doing that? They didn't love it. But I think when you got to weigh the audience, it's something to educate people, and I think people learn more from that than they did not.
Can we keep you for a few more minutes? I want to talk to you about the Hockey Canada verdict. I want to talk to you about Donald Trump. We're hanging out with Sharan Kaur in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. These conversations don't happen without the support of amazing partners like our friends at California Closets. They're taking bookings today and every day for free design consultations where you've got absolutely nothing to lose. My wife and I did this about 8.5 years ago. Sat down with a designer. We talked about our vision. We talked about our space. We talked about our budget. All of it relevant. And they came up with a game plan for us that we're still thrilled with to this day. That's why I sound like I really, really, really love California Closets when I talk about it, because I do. I look at them and we use them every single day. They're guaranteed for life. And they don't cost as much as you think. Custom designed to fit your space and your budget. You can learn more about how California Closets operates. Proudly Canadian owned and operated, that is, at californiaclosets.ca. A shout out to our friends at Friesen Brothers, celebrating 70 years this year. That's 2025, still family owned. Can you believe it? What an incredible legacy. Kicked off in 1955, a modest butcher shop in Hinton, Alberta. That was Frank Loveson that got it going. Still to this day, they do the little things that set them apart, like free ice cream for little kids while mom and dad shop. How great is that? We're going to be telling you more about events they have coming up through this year. That's 70 years. Your support, Real Talkers, has made it all possible, and we're proud to be partnering with Friesen Brothers. And we want to give a shout out to Athabasca University. I know that a lot of people this time of year, you're going, oh gosh, we're like a month out from back to school. I'm not going to be ready in September. You don't have to wait another year. Athabasca University is Canada's open university with world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education whenever, wherever it works for you. That means like if November's a good start time for you, if December's when you want to kick off your MBA, if you're going to Costa Rica in January, but you'll be back at it in March, it's no worries. You can open your options with the online offerings at Athabasca University. You know, more than 92% of their alumni, of AU alumni, say that they're in a job related to their field of study. 92%! There's like no other post-secondary that can claim that. You can learn more about the AU Advantage by checking out athabascau.ca. Hanging out with Sharan Kaur on this Tuesday following the August long weekend. Sharan, we had a comment here from Gizmo that says, I don't know a ton about the history, the region, talking about what's happening in Gaza, says the race, says whatever. All I know is that when I see children being starved to death, I know that it's wrong. And I think that there's a lot of people that feel the same way that Gizmo does. Let me bring you to a story closer to home. Obviously, this Hockey Canada verdict, I think everybody paid attention as these 5 former World Junior Hockey players were acquitted, found not guilty by a judge in a case that dated back to 2018. I think everybody is familiar with the story. I know that not everybody agrees with the verdict, and there's been a development since. While the NHLPA, the Players Association, says that it would like for these players to have a shot at resuming their NHL careers, the commissioner of the National Hockey League just a couple of days ago says no. Gary Bettman taking a stand. I have a couple of specific questions I want to ask you, but generally speaking, where's your head at with the verdict and the fallout and everything else?
I think the day the verdict came out, it was really challenging for a lot of people to kind of sit and wait to see what was going to be said, because our legal system has failed sexual assault victims so many times. And I kind of lost a bit of faith in humanity when I saw what the social media threads were saying of people about EM, and kind of trying to paint her as someone who was just out to destroy people's career. And I think that everyone knows somebody who has been sexually assaulted or raped. Everyone knows somebody. But you know what? It's almost impossible for anyone to admit that they know someone who's committed a sexual assault or rape, and we know they're out there. And the onus of what's happened always falls on the woman. And I think watching this trial kind of come to an end the way it did, my heart kind of sunk for not only for EM but also for victims in general, because you have these 5 hockey players who clearly were up to no good. Like, if people followed some of the specifics, like, you can't tell me when you're texting a group chat that has like 20 to 30 players to come down, like, you are openly basically calling for, I don't know another way to say this properly, but it sounds like gang raping someone. Like, there's no way that you can message 20 people and say, come have some fun, and think that's going to end well. Maybe she was okay with having sex with one person or 2 people or 3 people, but consent is always consent until it's not, right? So kind of watching the rhetoric that is coming out of people, like, there are people in my social media who, I posted something just saying how this was basically a failure of our judicial system, because while the judge said that she was not a reliable what do they call it, a witness, yeah, she wasn't, because she had alcohol in her system and drugs in her system. That inherently makes her unreliable, but that's because she had stuff in her system. It doesn't mean that what happened to her wasn't wrong. So even the way the judge kind of the way they spoke about the findings and kind of why they couldn't do things in a certain way, it painted her in a negative picture. And I really am disgusted by the type of stuff people are saying online, the names they are calling her, and talking about how she ruined these guys' careers. But, like, let's be very clear. There is nothing that these guys did that says they are good young men.
Yeah, I mean, you're like on a couple of things. Like the judge, the comments were, I mean, I guess a judge's ruling is a judge's ruling, and she wanted to communicate why she, decided what she decided. But I did feel like for a complainant in a sexual assault trial who was on the stand for multiple days, subjected to like multiple, cross-examination by multiple defense teams and the like, and just sort of like trying to, as best I can, try to walk a mile in those shoes, which is not great, obviously, but like the best I can try to understand. I think that would be just incredibly stressful. And at the same time, like I know that neither you or I are going to suggest that we don't think that the burden of proof shouldn't be extraordinarily high and shouldn't be significant in the Canadian judicial system. Like, nobody thinks that you shouldn't have to successfully prosecute a case to achieve a conviction. But I did just, I felt for her. I think that this whole thing is obviously a nightmare. And then I think, like, bigger picture, this sort of the idea, and here's why I think that Gary Bettman's, where he landed, the NHL commissioner, where he landed on this is so remarkable, is that, I think in other sports we've seen this as well, where either teams or leagues will say, like, the trial's before the courts, or the matter's before the courts, we're not going to comment on it. And then, if you have a not guilty verdict, then the athlete is welcomed back. And if you have a guilty verdict, then they'll do their time. And then sometimes, like Michael Vick, they're welcomed back, and sometimes they're not. But for the commissioner of the National Hockey League to say, despite the court's rulings, I'm paraphrasing what Bettman said, despite the court's not guilty rulings, these guys basically, he described it as abhorrent behavior, and basically said that this doesn't have a place in the National Hockey League, and they will not be permitted to resume their NHL careers. Let's be honest. I mean, for a few of those players, the NHL careers were already done regardless of these charges, had nothing to do with the charges. But still, I thought that it was a very significant move by the commissioner of a Big Four sport in the United States and the biggest sport in Canada.
I agree. I think that it was much needed. And it's sad that that's where the consequence comes for these guys. Like, I think that when you mentioned something that's important, we want our court systems to ensure that the burden of proof is like 100% correct, because that is what the judicial system is, right? But the judicial system, like many other things in society, has to adapt and evolve. And whether that means sensitivity around how sexual assault victims are treated or how their rulings are communicated, I don't see how the judge got to the conclusion they did with some of the facts of what occurred. Like, there was this one part of it where they're talking about how one of the men, while she was on the ground, was doing a splits over her face, and the judge did not find that to be done in a sexual way. I'm sorry, but in what world is that not done in some sort of sexual way? If I was at work right now and one of my colleagues pushed me to the floor and did the splits over my face with their crotch in my face, that would be grounds for dismissal, or that would be seen as something sexualizing the workplace. So it feels like there was interpretation used to a certain extent as to what they considered to be sexual or not, but they also did not take into consideration the power dynamic. When you have one woman and a number of men in the room, there clearly is a dynamic. So I think that we want the system to work well, but we have seen over and over and over and over across the country, across the board, when it comes to our judicial system, that it is consistently failing sexual assault victims. Talk to anyone who's had to report a sexual assault, and basically the process is so unbearable for the victim that most people back out and say they don't want to deal with it. So in this case, I honestly feel for EM, watching people online saying they need to say who she is. Who is this woman who destroyed these people's lives? Where is the compassion? Like, this could be someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's mother. Like, I don't understand what the judge was thinking with how they communicated all of this, because what they just did is they took a situation and ensured that women for the next decade, 2 decades, however long, are just not going to want to come forward, because look at what happens to their life on a public stage.
Yeah, no kidding. I recognize a lot of people have been on summer vacation. People have been road tripping, so they may not have caught our July 31st episode. I wanted to play a short here really quickly because I thought it was an important conversation on consent to start. Mary Jane James joined us. She's the CEO of the Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton. Kristen Rayworth, the former spokesperson for the provincial I Believe You campaign, a survivor and an advocate. And here's what they had to say on Real Talk. Everybody's drunk, or somebody's drunk, or everybody's partying. Everybody started making out. Everybody's on the dance floor. Everybody's at a music festival, whatever. What does securing consent, or what does ensuring or achieving or maintaining consent, what does that look like in practice?
Consent is given freely.
Active and ongoing.
It's active and ongoing. It's enthusiastic, and it's given for every sex act, if you will. So yes, I agreed to take my clothes off, but I didn't agree to this. I didn't agree to that. It is complex, Ryan. I'm not going to deny it. It is very, very complex.
When you say no, that's no. If you have to physically force someone to do something, to do a sex act, which is what occurred with me, will not let them leave said situation, that's sexual assault. And it doesn't matter whether you were drunk or they were drunk or whatever. If you are physically forcing someone into something that they do not want to do, that's sexual assault.
Don't worry about the definition. Worry about what the ambiance is with the person that you're involved in an intimate way with. Come on, we're not that stupid. You know, if you have to get a consent video, it's not. Just make sure that you're in the right place. And where is never the right place is 5 guys versus 1 girl.
Yeah, there was a powerful conversation on the 31st of July. I'm not going to, suggest that there are silver linings here, but I at least hope that a trial this prominent is prompting important conversations that are applicable to everyday people, not just elite athletes,
Oh yeah, and we see it. We see it in all boys schools. We see it in sports, but we also see it in workplaces. So my hope is that maybe companies, governments, maybe the judicial system will eventually at some point take this more seriously. There needs to be some level of sensitivity training. I wouldn't even call it sensitivity training. I feel like there's got to be some common sense training for judges and how they communicate this stuff, knowing that it is watched widely. And they should all go look at all the commentary that is being put on by these insane people on social media, because it is, I don't know who raised these people. Like, it is disgusting. It is horrible. And that is a society we live in, unfortunately, now. So I hope people who need help get the help they need. And at the end of the day, always come forward if you can find people to come forward to, because this should not dictate how sexual assault victims look for justice in the future.
I'm going to read a couple of emails from Real Talkers after we thank you for your time, Sharan. Just want to let them know that's coming up on this episode. Sharan Kaur, our guest. Couple of quick hits. We appreciate your time. The Trump tariff talk, it's never over. You think that there's some stability. You think that the waters are calming, and then the president of the United States, the most powerful person on planet Earth, decides that he's not done yet, cranking up some tariffs impacting Canadian exporters, most notably in steel, aluminum, and lumber, up to 35%. Only impacts about 5% of Canadian exports, but I think the message that it sends is still tough for Canadians to see. I know that some Canadians, in particular entrepreneurs, those involved in international trade, perhaps disheartened at this point. Where's your head at on these negotiations ongoing?
So listen, I'll say, and maybe I'm in a bit of a unique position because I got to face the Trump tariffs the first time around and kind of watch how he was thinking and what he was doing. And the discussions with Washington, D.C. were very, I would say, colorful, but kind of gave you a bit of an insight into how he thinks. And the best way to describe it is he doesn't. It's kind of reactive. Everything with him is reactionary and complete mass chaos. So I don't think he cares or understands the amount of chaos he puts businesses into, even domestically for himself when he comes up with these things. It's all about a show. It's the art of the deal with him, right? Like, it's how do I make the biggest impact to show people how much power I have. What I will say is that in Canada, at least from talking to people in government, but also talking to clients in the space who are impacted by the tariffs, people are uncertain, but they are not at the level of uncertain that we would have seen them in previously, because everything keeps shifting. And I keep seeing people online, especially a lot of conservative politicians, saying, well, you guys voted for Marc Carney as the prime minister, and he was all elbows up when it comes to fighting with Trump, but we still have tariffs. And I think what everyone needs to remember is that Marc Carney was the best case scenario of how to deal with someone like Trump. It didn't mean that he would get to zero tariffs. It just means that you're kind of leveling the playing field, where we went from a period of time where Trump despised our administration and did everything reactionary to kind of get back at them because he thought Canada was disrespectful towards him. The prime minister wasn't nice. The former minister of finance wasn't nice to him. So he kind of kept doing things to kind of stick it to Canada. And that's kind of where the whole 51st state thing kind of came from. But with Carney, at least we can see there is a level of respect that allows there to be less of this reactionary theatrics. Now, what would it have been different if Pierre Poilievre was in place? Yeah, we know Pierre Poilievre is someone who is a very, I would say he likes to agitate. And we already know Donald Trump does not like him. He has publicly stated that he's not a nice person. So I think everyone needs to remember that a negotiation is not done overnight. Prime Minister Carney is playing chess, whereas I think people want this to be a game of checkers. It's not immediate. So I would say let's make sure that we're constantly observing what's happening and that the government is having these conversations, but it's not going to be solved overnight. And what we need to do is not play to it in the press. And that's what Carney is doing. He's not playing to this in the press in the way that Trudeau and folks did, because that does not play well with someone like Trump, and they're trying to minimize the amount of risk to the Canadian economy and the people.
Yeah, well said. I'll let the audience know in our next episode, August 6th, we'll be talking to John Rapley about his interesting piece in the Globe and Mail. He argues that beneath the bluster, the Americans are actually losing the trade war. We'll get his take on that coming up in our next episode. Sharan, before we thank you for your time, I got to ask you about this tweet. Everybody knows coming up August 18th, by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. There's more than 200 candidates due to the shenanigans and the tomfoolery of the longest ballot committee. They're trying to fight for electoral reform, and they're flooding this ballot. Certainly not the first time they've done it. Not the first time they've targeted Pierre Poilievre. As a result, Elections Canada has announced it will use an adapted ballot for this by-election, where electors will need to write the name of the candidate they're voting for on the ballot. You've said and you tweeted that Elections Canada has just made election night much more painful. How come?
So here's the thing, and I'm going to be interested to see how Elections Canada treats this differently, because it should be, counting ballots should be treated the same across the board. I have a lot of issues with Elections Canada, having worked so many elections and seeing how behind the scenes works. The reason this is an issue is because now people have to write out their candidate onto the ballot. And in theory, that should be fine. But Pierre Poilievre has a name that not everyone can spell right off the bat. They will have it listed there, but you will be shocked as to the number of errors that will happen. Now, the problem is going to arise for people who are going to come out and say this ballot shouldn't count. Like the longest, I haven't looked at the longest ballot in the list of names here, but what if there's someone with the name of Peter Poilievre or something close? So if you can't show that the intent was clearly for Pierre Poilievre, that vote can be dismissed. And this is where I think Elections Canada messed up, because they cannot use this opportunity to say, oh no, we think they meant Pierre Poilievre. Because in every other scenario, it is the right of every other party there to demand that that vote be considered null and void if it is not clear who the intent is. So listen, I'd like to think that voters are smart enough to write the name out properly, but I have seen the most ridiculous things written on ballots and I've gotten them taken out. So I think this was stupid on Elections Canada's part. And you know what, maybe they'll get me, maybe they'll say, no, you know, Sharon, you're wrong, but I don't think so.
You have to believe that somewhere they're trying to recruit a candidate or find somebody named Peter Poilievre.
100%.
Who could accidentally be elected.
On the mayoral campaign, we had somebody who had the exact same name as the guy running for mayor, but with an S at the end of his name. So, like, anything's possible.
Oh, my gosh. Sharan Kaur, we love every time you swing on by. People can check out your past episodes where you've argued for Alberta oil and gas all the way from
Drill, baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill. We actually we created a whole highlight clip out of your drill, baby, drill comment last time you were on. Former Deputy Chief of Staff to Finance Minister Bill Morneau, longtime contributor on CTV and terrestrial radio, and obviously a wonderful friend of this show. Nice to see your face again. Have a great rest of your summer.
Have a great rest of your summer.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sharon. Make sure you give Sharon a follow where you find her on X. We'll link to that in the show notes, as well as on Instagram. I see everybody all fired up. A lot of you still talking in the live chat, powered by Park Power, by the way, about Bill 21, and we can get to those comments. Plus, I want to get to your emails following that Hockey Canada verdict. Sharon was joining us in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, the best or nothing. Before we get to these emails, I want to remind you what's going on at North Road Investment Council. This time of year, especially in the summer, it's kind of time, whether you're at the lake, maybe you're out sort of, sitting on your riding mower. You got 2 hours with nothing but time to kill. Maybe get a cold one in your hands and you're pausing and reflecting on your career and retirement goals. 'Tis that time of year. And at North Road Investment Council, they work with Canadians that have done exactly that, built successful careers. But now you want to make sure that your wealth is being organized to deliver a successful retirement. The typical client at North Road has at least $2 million in investable assets, oftentimes coming from analytical or detail-driven professions. Maybe you're an architect. Maybe you're a dentist, an engineer. If this sounds like you, the team at North Road Investment Council is very interested and open to a conversation. You can visit their website to get that journey started, northroadic.com. And start that conversation built on clarity, discipline, and true alignment. Saw some incredible videos, some incredible Instagram posts over the weekend from the Ranch Golf and Country Club. This is my home golf course. Absolutely love it out there. That's why we bring the Real Talk Golf Classic out there every single June. Well, they're booking tee times through August into September. And of course, I don't have to tell you how they see the Ranch. That is, across the province of Alberta, the Ranch is consistently voted the best value for any public golf course in the Metro Edmonton region and across the province. Did you know the Ranch ranked in the top 100 golf courses in the country? That's right, the 30th best value in Canada, so says Score Golf magazine. If you're not familiar yet with the course, you can tour it online. Check out theranchgolf.com, and you can take that virtual course tour. I absolutely love it. I can take you through some of my favorite holes and the ones that eat my lunch every single time. Probably my favorite par 3 on the entire course. That's that hole 8. You know it. If you're at the ranch, you know hole 8. It's not that big of a shot, probably about a 140-yard tee shot. Maybe a nice pitching wedge, maybe a nice 9-iron, but you can't go long. It's surrounded by sand. If you keep looking past, you can see an elk ranch in the back here. I absolutely love the vibe there. Buddy's skull, jarred one earlier this year. I got to give him credit. I'm still waiting for mine. Wouldn't it be great if that could happen at the ranch? When you visit the ranch, you make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. John Hicks, the producer of this show, with a rare long weekend, although something tells me you were probably hitting the area highways,
right?
bringing joy to people of all ages. How did you spend your last couple of days?
Yeah, I love seeing people tie the knot, Ryan. It's just, it's not the same every time at all. No, I'm just kidding.
How many weddings have you DJ'd this summer, would you say?
I cut down. Last year I did about 30. This year I'm doing about a little under 20. But next year I'm going to go cut that probably down to 10. I'm nearing it, not to scare anyone, but that. I'm getting old or getting sick of it. I love DJing, especially I have one on Saturday.
It's obvious you love it.
Where I was tired. I was like, and you start counting the hours, Ryan. You start going 6 hours left, 5 hours left, 4 hours left.
That's not a good sign
Last
on
calls
any job,
at midnight. But this one, I mean, you get into it, and then all of a sudden, 20 minutes in, you're like, wow, these people are celebrating. The dance floor's full. They're smiling. People are taking pictures. The photographers are like, this is crazy. And then, by the end of it, I'm so amped up I can't go to sleep. So you remember why you do it, because it is fun. But it is also it's very taxing. I'm wondering if I don't want to say this. I'm not saying like I'm not body shaming or anything, but I think I might become overweight once I stop this, because I do a lot of lugging. I realized this over this weekend, especially because I did 3 events, right? I'm like, man, I do a lot of lugging of speakers and cables and bags and lights, and I'm like, I wonder if I stop doing this every weekend, 2-3 times a weekend, if I'm just gonna gain a bunch of weight.
You can come join me at the gym and make up
over
for
my
it.
hair, yeah.
Yeah, we show up, we watch people work out,
Yeah,
we spend 20 minutes on the treadmill, and then we hit the hot tub. It's
even when I went to the gym, I was like, I do not like this. I would rather be doing things, like when you're working, like when I am on the weekend, I feel like, okay, I'm working, but I'm also getting, cardio. I'm also getting, a workout out of it. But going to the gym to work out, I mean, what was that line from Brad Pitt in Fight Club where he's like, it's self. You go ahead. I'm going to look up the quote.
Yeah, I know you'll find it. I got to rewatch that movie. I would see with you. I think a friend of mine gave me interesting advice many years ago, and he said if you feel like what you're doing, and this is advice to any real talkers that offer a service, like if you're a contractor, you're a service provider, the gig economy. He said if you ever feel like you're getting burned out and you're confident in what you're offering, he says, why don't you try charging twice as much and working half as much? And I would extend the same advice to you. If you think that you can pull it off, it's a great way. The market rules, man. The free market. If you're not where you think you are, the free market will let you know. But you may be surprised, and maybe you wind up working 8 to 10 weddings every summer, and without taking a haircut on the remuneration.
So the Brad Pitt quote was, self-improvement is masturbation. And then there was something about self-destruction is whatever. But I feel the same way. I love feeling like I'm getting a workout. I just don't like the whole thing of scheduling it, going there, standing in front of mirrors. The whole deal just seems a bit it's out of my realm of understanding.
Yeah, a lot happening. Like we were saying before we talked to Sharon, over the weekend, I'm just sitting there and usually August, a lot of podcasts, not us. I mean, obviously we'll take days off here and there. It is summer. We want to spend time with our families and the like. But a lot of news, politics, and especially sports podcasts will just sign off for the entire summer.
Yeah.
But it's been wild what's been happening. And so obviously we've got kind of a full lineup coming up through this week. And we're going to touch on a bunch of stuff. I'm not sure if you saw, but a Canadian man exonerated, spent 30 years in prison for a murder that advocates say that he did not commit. This guy has been insisting on his innocence ever since he was convicted 30 years ago. We're going to be talking to the team. There's a group called Innocence Canada. We're going to be talking to them this week and get into that. I also saw Denis in our live chat earlier, powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. Denis says over the weekend he signed the what are they calling it? The Forever Canada petition. This is the one that Thomas Lukaszuk, former deputy premier in Alberta, has kickstarted. Thomas is going to be joining us later this week. We want to check in on that. He's got to get like 300,000 signatures, which is a huge effort. Like if you actually think about it, 300,000 signatures on paper. And I know some of you, I'm sure, I bet many of you would be keen to know where you can sign that. So we'll check in with Thomas and see how that's going. But that's kickstarted as well. Former Alberta Premier Ed Stelmach has thrown his support behind that, which I thought was interesting. He's certainly not Alberta's most prominent former premier or the most memorable former premier. But when you talk to people about Ed Stelmach, like I have very rarely heard anybody take a really big swipe at him. He's like widely respected. So I think that like you get somebody like that on board, that's a big deal. And then I've noticed some politicians that are currently campaigning. I'll note Troy Wason, who's campaigning. He wants to be a city councillor out in St. Albert. That's one off the top of my head. Andrew Knack, who wants to be the next mayor of Edmonton. They're aligning themselves with this campaign. I would say probably risk-free. You always think like when a campaign or when a candidate is going to align themselves with something outside of their campaign, outside of their control, could it be a dangerous move? But I would suggest humbly that people that are going to vote for Alberta to separate, for Alberta to leave Canada, are not Andrew Knack's target voters, as an example. So I think that's interesting to see as well, whether or not, politicians leading up to this fall election, municipal elections in our home province of Alberta, where town and city councils obviously will be determined, school boards and the like, to see if any more people will kind of hitch their horse to that wagon and see if they can get to that task. 300,000 signatures. When you actually think about it, I know that the last time Thomas was on here, he was very confident. He said, I don't think we'll have a problem. He said he wasn't worried about the benchmark being lowered in Alberta. That was Daniel Smith, UCP's government, doing to 177,000. He says we'll get the 300,000, no problem. But if you actually think about it in practice, I don't know how you do it. And I'm not trying to be defeatist at all. I'm just being a realist. Like if you actually think about it, you'd have to have thousands of volunteers. You'd have to have each one of them commit to going to get 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 signatures. I don't know where you'd set up. I saw them at farmers markets, which I think is really smart. Oh. You probably want to go outside. Like they'll probably be outside like folk music festivals. You want to go somewhere where there's like, 5 to 15,000 people, and hopefully you can get 10% of them. You know what I mean?
Sure, but at the same time, those are all the places people go to get away from politics, like the farmers market, music festivals. Like, what are you doing? Why are you trying to ruin my weekend?
But that's why, and you're 100% right. People do want to get away from politics, but then you do this as like, this is not political. You're like, this is about Canada.
Yeah.
This is about our love for Canada. Mm-hmm. You got to like make it. It's got to be like inherently inspiring.
Yeah. Well, right? I saw Thomas pushing on social media over the weekend, or maybe it was the end of the week. But I saw him sitting beside the Canadian flag. I saw some reels, so I'm like, oh, he's back at it again. He's making the push for it. But I think Forever Canada is a pretty good hashtag there.
Yeah. Wise Kyle says it's still under the old rules. Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like Thomas, when he was on the show, he was just confident. He's like, no problem. He's like, we'll get 300, no problem. I just think like it's always easy when somebody, why am I even taking this line? I'm not trying to be critical of it. I think it's great. I'm going to sign the petition. I encourage you to do the same. I'll sign it right here live on the show. I think that's the best way to do it. But I think it's easy for people that are starting a GoFundMe, or they're trying to get, like they're doing a bottle drive for their kids' hockey team or whatever. And you always have you're like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get all this support. And then you have kind of your circle that you approach, the people that you've oftentimes asked for support, your next door neighbors, the people at the community association, the people at work, the people that always buy your chocolate almonds. Just a note, Johnny and I will always buy your chocolate almonds. We will buy your Girl Guide cookies. We're happy to support those types of initiatives. But like getting it to 50,000 would be remarkable. Getting it to 300,000, I mean, that would be a real statement, and I hope they do it. Mm-hmm. I think that would be incredible, but that would be a real statement,
Yeah, it's in my mind, I don't want to say unreachable because we have Thomas coming on the show, but you and I know it's not like
it's tough. 300,000.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I hope they can do it. Vamp Fashions in the chat says Ed Stelmach is one of our best ever premiers and politicians. Yeah, I mean, Steady Eddie. He probably could have been premier for longer. He stepped on. A lot of people say that there's these third rails of Alberta politics. One of them being a sales tax, and the other one royalty reviews, which is kind of ironic because obviously Ed Stelmach wanted to make sure that Albertans were getting the best bang for their buck, but of course Albertans rewarded him for that with a pretty tough result at a leadership review, and ultimately Ed Stelmach's political career was cooked. But just a remarkable guy, still does a ton of public service, and all I know is that every time I'm hosting an event and Premier Ed Stelmach is introduced in the room, there's a standing ovation. So I think that it was a great snag for Thomas Lukaszuk to grab Ed Stelmach there, and I would imagine they're going to try to get others as well. You got to get the celebrity endorsements, right? Like they'll want to get who are like the great Albertans. You want to get Paul Brandt to do it. You're gonna who would be biggest is like Tate McRae.
Nickelback.
Tate McRae and Nickelback could just basically be like, hey fans, could you please sign this? And they'd have 300,000 overnight.
Yeah. To young signatures for sure. If you could get a couple of those, that'd be great. But yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Katie Lang.
80, yeah, why not Katie Lang?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who's the Albertan with the most clout right now, though. It's got to be Tate McRae. I don't know who's got the biggest following.
The world racquetball champion the last 9 years.
Yeah, out of Alberta.
Okay, so just before, because I know you're about to go to emails and all this serious stuff. Let's have fun for like one and a half minutes.
Let's have fun all so long.
So we were talking about over the weekend. I was talking to some people at a wedding about just how hockey affects people's lives. Nothing to do with World Junior hockey players.
Yeah.
Just like Oilers, how my life is over when they lose the playoffs.
Totally.
And then 2 weeks later, you're like, okay, I'm back at work, whatever, summer's coming. It's amazing how many people are successful in Alberta, especially, but in Canada, and who kind of fly under the radar with all these other athletes.
Yeah.
The number one racquetball player in men's racquetball has been dominant for 9 years. Nobody can beat this guy. His name is, I know you're looking it up. His name is Eric, I think it's Wachinski,
Okay, yeah.
and he was born in Edmonton, Alberta. He now lives in Texas. I assume.
Are you talking about Kane Wazelenchuk?
Sorry, Kane Wazelenchuk.
Kane Wazelenchuk.
That's right. And so I guess because living in the States, it's easier to hit the racquetball circuits or whatever. But this guy has been by far the most dominant Canadian in any sport in the last decade. 9 years.
Johnny, he's won 13 U.S. Open championships.
Insane.
The previous record was 4.
This is like Simone. This is such a level for a Canadian that, and nobody talks about it. Like this should be a talking point at every cocktail party. This guy should have a statue. This guy should have a parade. And nobody.
Smokes.
I didn't even know his name. I just got it wrong again. But this guy is he's an incredible Canadian. He's an incredible athlete, and he's older too. Like age doesn't seem to affect him. He is one of the most dominant athletes in sport ever, and nobody knows about him.
Oh, well, I bet you racquetball players know about it.
For
But
sure.
yeah, look at this. Holy smoke. I am like, we got to get
Doesn't
this
it
guy
blow
on.
you away?
He's only 43, by the way. We got to get this guy on
But
the
still,
show.
to be dominant so in his 30s, mid-30s, late 30s, now 40s, still, he's beating young people who are like 25, insane.
I'm just like obsessing over his videos. Kane Wazelenchuk, ranked number 1. I got weird framing on this video. Now all of a sudden there he is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he's insane.
Shame on me. He's got a good Edmonton name, Wazelenchuk. That's a good Edmonton name. That's a good. I'm assuming that's Ukrainian. Yeah. Wow. 13 U.S. Open titles.
It's unheard of.
I feel like this
should be dominant in any
this should
sport.
have been a positive reflection.
To be dominant in any professional sport at the very top against people for almost a decade, that is like, come on. Where's his heritage moment? Where's his parade?
Kidding. Tony's picking a playground fight here. Understandable, Tony. We will allow it. The judges will allow it. She says pickleball rules, racquetball drools. Ooh, okay. 80s Fanify is suggesting that Nathan Fillion and Bret Hart of the Hart Foundation, obviously the legendary Hart wrestling family, could get that petition rolling. Jan Arden, Katie Lang, Cor Blund says Steph. Interesting. Ben, says Nathan Fillion would be a huge endorsement. Maybe Michael J. Fox. I know Michael J. Fox sort of claims Burnaby as his home, but there's definitely Alberta ties there. And then you also got to think, some are saying Tommy Chong, 100%. That was always one of my greatest disappointments in Real Talk history when Tommy Chong turned us down for our 420 episode that one year. I thought, wouldn't that have been great to have our Joe Rogan, Elon Musk moment and have Tommy Chong in studio smoking weed? And that would have been in our smaller, modest broom closet size studio that we started in. So that thing would have hotboxed in like 30 seconds, you guys. It would have been like the greatest video of all time as far as I'm concerned. We'll see if we could recruit Tommy Chong. I'd be curious to know if someone like a Nathan Fillion or a Michael J. Fox, like typically you don't see them getting involved politically. Bret Hart, I think you could probably say the same thing. If they might see this as something like a little bit risky, you got to have the folks, you got to have the prominent Canadians. Like, who'd be like an incredible one? Like if you could get, and I don't think it's going to happen because my guess is like they're not best buds. I'll ask Thomas this when he comes on the show. But like if you could get like a Stephen Harper, right? If you could get like those guys out, the sort of like the political power players out of Western Canada, or if you could get like, and I don't think that Pierre Poilievre would do it. It doesn't make any sense for him to do it politically. I think for his love for Canada, if you wanted to sell people on his love for Canada, it would make sense. Politically, it would not make sense ahead of the by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. But if Pierre Poilievre would do it, that'd be a huge boon. I also don't think that Pierre Poilievre's going to be super motivated to do any favors for Thomas Lukaszuk, though, either. You know what I mean? There's just kind of there's that tension that exists. I'm not saying that
Good insight. Good.
Well, hey, John, that's why people show up every day here. I'm not saying that I think that there's a personal beef between the two of them.
No.
We'll ask Thomas this to his face. But the idea, like the former progressive, like provincial progressive conservatives and even former federal progressive conservatives, not necessarily like 100% aligned with today's Conservative Party of Canada. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think it's also fair to say like most political beefs are on the surface. I don't think they are deep with it. Even Trudeau and Poilievre, when they would go head to head in the House, you'd see the behind-the-scenes photos of them on the elevator going to the lunchroom or wherever, and they're smiling, they're laughing, they're shaking hands when they're out at engagements out in the public. So, like, I think most of the political beefs are on the surface. But no, I don't think Poilievre and Lukaszuk have an axe to grind. But obviously, if they were in a room together, they'd be debating this pretty fiercely.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Poilievre's got to be careful on this one too, right? Because he's like, he's got to win this Battle River Crowfoot by-election. I don't speak for the folks in that riding at all. But I bet you that, the idea that of Alberta sovereignty is probably more popular in that riding and others than it would be, for example, in the major urban centers. So it's a fine line for Poilievre to walk. I also want to recognize, how about this one? A very fair comment. This on the heels, the World Aquatic Championships, like Summer McIntosh has absolutely dominated.
Sure. Not an Albertan, from Ontario.
No, for sure. And Vamp says...
We were talking about...
Yeah, for sure. Like, you wanted to have fun, we're having fun.
Talking about Alberta.
Vamp says, you guys are going on and on about this squash player. Nobody's mentioning Summer McIntosh. Now, 13... I don't like Summer... She's still, like... So, I mean, I know that swimmers...
Early 20s.
Swimmers don't swim till they're like 45.
Not
but still,
at all.
Man,
they go out early, right?
Still fair to say that she's relatively early in her career, relatively speaking. Now has 13 career medals at the World Championships. That's the most of any Canadian, including 8 gold medals. She wins 4 World Championship golds and a bronze draped around her. And you probably think she's a little older because when she was dominating at the Olympics, she was like...
I thought she was like 22.
16.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And some are saying, and I don't even think, I haven't seen the caveat applied of like the greatest female swimmer of all time. I know that obviously Michael Phelps and his Olympic dominance is something to be discussed for sure. But there have been conversations over the past few days that I've seen, and not just among armchair commentators like us. I'm talking like sports commentators, pundits, columnists, swimming, like prominent swimming coaches that are saying that Summer McIntosh, by the end of her career, could be regarded as the greatest swimmer of all time.
Well, we might know in a few years. I'm pretty sure like swimming, the peak is like early 20s. Like it's real fast. Some of them go out in their late teens. So like if she's 18, she could be done by 21, 22, right? But we're talking about domination with the racquetball guy. Summer McIntosh, females swimming. I mean, there's no one better. There might, by the time she's done, have been no one better ever.
You know what blows my mind too is like she wins she wins like at 100 meters. She wins at 200. She wins at 400. She finished third in a tight field in the 800 freestyle. Still a bronze medal. Incredible accomplishment. But like that to me is wild as well. Like in track, for example, you don't typically see somebody excelling at like 100, 200, 800, 1500, 3000. You know what I mean? Like it's like they're highly specialized, and I know that in swimming it is a little bit different, but her accomplishments here and her versatility, and I mean, this is just a Canadian athlete to get really excited about. I know that, when we watch the Olympics or we watch World Championships, typically Canadians, we kind of have these athletes come up through the years, right? Like, I think of Donovan Bailey as an example. Ben Johnson before him, obviously disgraced. You think of like sort of these high achievers, and we always look at it when it's outside of the sport of hockey. We always look at it as though, look at us, like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, another great example, NBA Finals MVP, NBA MVP, NBA champion, and the like. But people go from this modest country of like 40 million people, these incredible accomplishments by these Canadians, and every once in a while we get this athlete that doesn't just compete at the highest level and doesn't just contend at the highest level, but like shatters world records and dominates. And it's incredible what it does to an entire nation.
100%.
From coast to coast to coast, boys and girls, older folks, like everybody's getting excited about her accomplishments in the pool. And I know that probably for a lot of people, for the first time in a long time, they've actually been Googling like when the next Summer Olympics are, so they can like circle their calendars, Yeah.
You mentioned Penny Oleksiak, right?
Yeah. No, I didn't mention Penny, but
so she would probably, before summer came around, would probably have been the most successful Canadian female Olympic swimmer. She's got some gold, some bronze, some silvers, 2016, 2020, and she holds records still. But summer is just, in the short amount of time she's been competing is just way more dominant, right?
Yeah, so Penny during the 2016 summer, and I first... this is kind of funny how people wind up on your radar, but I remember first hearing about her is before those Olympics, and someone was like, Jamie Oleksiak, who was this defenseman, I think for the Dallas Stars at the time. Somebody was like, did you know his sister's like this incredible
Olympian,
swimmer? Right? And she ends up winning 4 medals in the 2016 Summer Olympic Games and became Canada's youngest Olympic champion with her gold in the 100-meter freestyle. The first athlete born in the 2000s to claim an Olympic gold in an individual event at that Games. She was named the Lou Marsh Trophy in 2016 as Canada's top athlete, which is really incredible. She was 16 years of age when she was named Canada's top athlete. What other sports are you that young? I mean, like maybe gymnastics, swimming. Like there's not a lot of sports where at 16 years of age, you're like the best in the world.
Yeah, it's all about training and longevity. We're just talking about the swimmers. So I'll go back to female competitive, most successful in the world. It's considered, Katie Ledecky. I don't know if you've heard that name as well. American, 14 Olympic gold medals, 9 of them are gold. 28. I'm not sure if she just retired the last Olympics or is still competing, but that's someone who had a longer career. Like I just said, late teens, early 20s is when female swimmers usually peak, right? So to be 28, still competing, still winning medals, she is the one everyone looks to worldwide, right? But we'll see if Summer can eclipse that. It's all about longevity. How long can you stay healthy? How long can you continue to be... I don't know. You got to be kind of an alien. Like, look at what's his name, who we talk about with the wide shoulders and the male swimmer. You just
Michael
mentioned.
Phelps.
Yeah, Michael Phelps. Like, you've got to have something that nobody else has, and sometimes it's just inherent or something you're born with, right?
Yeah, for sure. Vamp continues in our live chat, says, a guy trying to cause controversy may mention that our most successful athletes on the world stage have all been young women. I love the point, 100%. Steph also with a great talking about like you want celebrity star power behind Thomas Lukaszik's or we shouldn't call it Thomas's petition, the Forever Canadian petition. It says Arlene Dickinson would probably sign the petition and perhaps her endorsement would go a long way. This is all. It all comes back to the you want to have like, and I know that Arlene has lived in Alberta. I don't know if she currently lives in Alberta, but you got to have like somebody that can not just be a recognizable face, but you also got to have, like when politicians or mostly campaign managers talk about that GOTV, you got to get out the vote. You got to get people to actually sign the petition. And if you want people to take action on anything, you got to remove all the barriers. It's got to be as easy. It's got to be as simple as possible. And typically, I think that that's like door-to-door canvassing, meeting people, like parking outside grocery stores, set up outside Friesen Brothers, whatever you're going to do. Like get people where they're at, right? And then you got to have people that are willing to take no for an answer as well. It's tough. Canvassing is tough work, man.
Listen, come to my door at any time before 8 a.m., after 4 p.m. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll take a look at it. I'll buy your chocolate.
Before 8 a.m.?
Listen, before I leave for work. I'll buy your chocolate almonds. I'll buy your Girl Guide cookies.
Yeah.
If you come attack me at Friesen Bros while I'm looking through those fresh vegetables.
You're stuffing your face.
While I'm going to get one of those take-home pizzas and watch a movie on a Sunday, I might be inclined to just put my hand up and walk by.
I understand where you're coming from, and I
Not today.
I don't think you're wrong to do that. Hey, I want to get to a couple of emails before we wrap this episode, and really meaningful ones from Mel and Cheryl. Before we do, I do want to make sure that UCAN Youth Services is on your radar. We're partnering with them through this year. They've got a capital campaign coming up. It's really exciting things happening at UCAN. This is a not-profit charitable organization that helps young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence, and they have like deliverable results. You can check out their work at ucan.ca. They've got their relentless outreach program. These are young people, 12 to 17, that are having interactions with Edmonton police. Basically, if I can put it in my own words, kind of on a road to ruin, quite frankly. They need someone to believe in them. They need opportunity. They need stable peer supports. They need stable housing. They need stable food security. That's what UCAN is providing and doing an amazing job. They've also got their work placement programs. These are like quick, typically like 8 to 12 week employment training programs that lead to entry-level positions, typically in the construction trades. And then, well, sky's the limit, right? That includes the Road to Work program, which is a collaboration between UCAN and companies in construction, road building, and traffic safety industries. If you're involved, if your role at your company, in particular a construction company, but it could be anything. They work with IKEA, they work with Tim Hortons. If you're hiring entry-level workers and you're looking for motivated, skilled talent, look no further than UCAN. You can learn more about their partnerships, corporate partnerships, by visiting their website today. That's ucan.ca.
I will say that conversation with Sharon really important right now, and it's just so sad. What's like how can you not at this point just be like, what is going on? No matter what's going on there, let's figure this out. Let's stop it, because we show those pictures today, and those are from we have pictures we see every day, but that was the one I showed. I looked at the date. I was like, this was 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. This was 8 weeks ago. They're still bombarding these people with. It's just, I can't imagine Edmonton being in rubble and people not being up in arms and wanting to stop it. But it feels like, it's kind of like Russia, Ukraine. It's just kind of fallen down the list of things that are on our headlines.
And I think a lot of people, to be quite honest with you, I think a lot of people have find it a little bit easier. Just to be harsh, but to be accurate, to ignore it, or to push it out of their mind. And I don't know if your social media is the same as mine, but I've got many of my Jewish friends are very outspoken on this in a manner that is very different than what some of my other friends are posting about this, and it's like in many instances, just real life, scrolling my Instagram or my Facebook feeds, and you'll have the different posts and the different narratives and the different conviction that people are sharing on this.
Sure.
It's quite disheartening. It's just like people are worlds apart on this.
Yeah.
And we'll get we'll get notes, and a lot of times it gets really personal. I didn't plan on talking about this today, but I'm happy to talk about it. It gets very personal when a close friend, someone I've known for 25 years, is like, you have a talk show, you have a platform, you're not doing what you need to do on this. And it's like, listen, we try to cover this with empathy, with evidence, with facts, with insights, with balanced perspectives. But like, this is a region. I saw one of you in our live chat today saying like this violence, this has been a conflict. And I know that you never just want to throw up your hands in despair and say it's never going to resolve itself. It's never going to fix itself. It's hopeless. But people are saying that this has been a conflict that has lasted for millennia, for centuries
months.
Anyway. Well,
sure. The most
like,
recent. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, that's
forever.
just the symptom.
Forever. Yeah.
Forever. And it's a tough one to talk about, but I think one of the reasons why, we bring it up now, one of the reasons why we asked Sharan about it, is number one, because, Carney's, declaration that Canada will recognize a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly, which is very significant. Canadian, Hercules aircraft making humanitarian drops for the very first time. That was within the last 24 hours of us recording this show. And the Prime Minister of Canada describing the withholding of humanitarian aid as a violation of international law. Like that's the language is getting tougher. I think probably the United States swings the biggest stick here. Obviously, sure. Benjamin Netanyahu, talking about fully occupying the Gaza Strip, is moving in the opposite direction of a ceasefire. And so, we'll continue to invite your feedback on this to talk at ryanjespersen.com. No matter where you lean on it, happy to hear you out. And I don't know, maybe a lot of you just feel like I do, which is just like discouraged. You feel despair. For a lot of people, you look at, for me, there are willing combatants, right? And those could be Israeli soldiers, those could be Hamas fighters, and then there are the children. And like anytime, anywhere in the world, like there are other, humanitarian crises we're not even talking about right now. Like what's happening in Rwanda as an example. Sure. Like we could do 5-hour shows every single day and not even scratch the surface of what deserves to be talked about. Yeah. But I think when children around the world are suffering like they are there, how can you not be troubled by it? How can you not demand something from your federal government? How can you not try to do something in some form of citizen action for a lot of people? That'll mean different things, like making a donation to an NGO or like a charity that you see doing work in the region. Perhaps that's UNICEF or something else, wherever you feel led.
It's hard, like you just said, seeing stuff on social media, especially when they're friends. You see no empathy. You see no sympathy. It's really discouraging, especially, like you said, children. They're innocent. They're innocent in all of this. So it really is hard. I really do feel like empathy, people say it's soft to feel for people, and people say, oh, it's thousands of miles away. How am I supposed to care? But like, I really do believe that having empathy, sympathy, putting yourself in other people's shoes, caring about people who are innocent in situations like this, it really is an elevated, higher state of being. I feel like before you read these emails, I'll just say, like, long ago when we were living in caves as Neanderthals, I know that like it was our defense mechanism, something we don't know about, something we fear. It made us scared, danger, alert. Yeah. Be angry, be violent. But I really feel like it's a higher level of being to know that sign in your head and to be like, no, I should have empathy. I should care about people, because like some of these pictures, I'm inclined to not even show them.
They're tough. I think we should.
They hurt me. They give me pain looking at this. I know that they didn't want this, that they didn't do they didn't do anything to cause this harm to themselves. And I only see more pain when these kids growing up are going to turn into adults who, what do you think they're going to think?
Of course.
What do you think they're going to do when they get older?
Of course.
What would you do? Would you want revenge for your mother and father and family and friends being killed? Of course. For going without food for months, for having to drink out of puddles? Like, it's just, I don't want to say it, but I think you said it already. I don't see an end to this. So,
yeah, it's like I don't want to take that position, but I think that a lot of people feel that way. And you wonder if lawmakers, policymakers, ambassadors feel the same way too. Matthew in our live chat says that reminds him of a clip from the movie Hotel Rwanda. What a film. Great. He says when the hotel manager was thanking a videographer recording footage to show the world, saying that it would make it stop. And Matthew said, but the videographer bluntly responded, people will see it. They'll say that's so terrible, and then they'll go back to eating their dinner, which is kind of the way that it's kind of the way that people are conditioned, right?
And not to put a weird caveat on the end of this, but I just feel like, because I know you love the aliens thing, right? We always disagree on whether the aliens exist or whether they'll get here eventually. I just wonder what they're going to think when they get down here finally. And they're such a higher level of consciousness above us. They're like, you guys were fighting over imaginary lines in the sand and race and class, and we're just collectively existing out here as one
Do you
consciousness.
think aliens have religion?
I think aliens, if wherever they are, and the ones that especially get there, we can get into another show about this. Like
This show is rapidly
whatever-
losing credibility.
Yeah.
Rapidly.
They're like, dude, stop smoking
losing.
weed.
Yeah.
But whatever aliens make it here, they're the smartest ones because we know about light speed travel and all that. Whichever, they're going to be here and they're going to be like, the shit you guys were arguing about
fair
it
point. I
is
think that
meaningless.
Maybe just the next generation of humans are going to think that too. Chad F. watching us live. What's up, Chad? Says it hurts my soul to know how much families are struggling in the world for no fault of their own. Which is, I think, just a wonderful comment, and I think that Chad probably speaks for a lot of us. Ms. KD says, Jespo, when we're being stretched to the max financially, it gets increasingly difficult to provide financial supports to NGOs. We need to fight on all fronts for disparities. 100%. That's a great comment. I also noted that Jillian, in conversation about our Canada's incredible female athletes, not to mention who's this young tennis player? Is it Immobile or something? I was in the land of. We're just back, by the way, from beautiful Middle Lake, Saskatchewan, where we spent our August-long weekend. The land of one bar of 3G reception, and so for the most part, I was off my phone, but I was able to see that another young Canadian tennis star is making an incredible name for herself, which is amazing. Canada's Mboko.
Yeah.
Canada's young tennis. There's like 5 of them. My parents are huge tennis fans, and so they keep me informed and in the loop. But there's like 4 or 5 young Canadian tennis players coming up that are just kicking ass. Jillian says our female athletes stand out on the world stage because we've been funding boys and girls sports more equally and for years earlier than many other nations. Interesting point from Jillian. Yeah. All right, when we ask for your feedback, and we do every single episode, to talk at RyanJespersen.com, we got to make sure that we leave time to read these emails. And both of these from Mel and Cheryl were received following our July 31st episode with Mary Jane James, Kristen Rayworth, where we got into the Hockey Canada verdict. It wasn't just about the verdict. We didn't bring on lawyers to argue whether or not the judge was correct in assessing whatever. We talked bigger picture about the trial, the verdict, the fallout, and basically how this story landed in front of Canadians. You can check that out again. That was our July 31st episode. Mel says, Real Talk team, I've been a longtime listener to this podcast, many others, but I never felt compelled to write in until now. Mel says, your recent episode on the Hockey Canada case moved me deeply. He says, I'm a mother of 2 daughters, and I grew up in an era where aggressive and predatory sexual behavior by men toward women was met with apathy and dismissal. Says the Hockey Canada case made me fear that this era is not over, not even close. But your episode on the 31st of July gave me hope. She says it was powerful, honest, and necessary. Thanks for shining a light on this conversation, for asking the questions that truly matter, questions that educate, challenge, and help open the door to healing and change. She says, I was especially grateful that you played that full clip of Daniel Sloss, that comedian. He's talking about Russell Brand, by the way, a message that needs to be spread far and wide. And she says, and Johnny, your closing comments were raw, real, and deeply heartfelt. Mel says, thank you for sharing that part of yourself and for stepping in the ring. To your guests, she says, to Mary Jane and Kristen, thank you for your wisdom, for your grace, your vulnerability. You created space for difficult truths to be shared, and your brave voices will stay with me for a long time. Mel says, my thanks to the Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton, their Wise Guys program. That's so cool. It's actually maddening. It's been defunded, by the way. You can listen to the episode to learn more about that. And she says, and to Real Talk, for standing beside victims and survivors and for the unseen impact you're making. She says, I truly believe your July 31st conversation may prevent future harm, not just by supporting those who've been hurt, but by giving potential perpetrators and those who enable them a reason to pause and choose differently. You pick your spots when you really decide to dig in. But I told you this.
When you cue me.
Well, no.
But yeah,
but you take risks, and
well,
you took a risk that day.
I try, like I just said, I try to put myself in other people's shoes. So I try not to dig myself too deep in a trench because I never know. Like most of the time, if people are mean or angry or upset about something, it's like something's happened to them, to make them that way. Some kind of perspective they had, something horrible in the life. We all wear our scars and they're inside. So I don't know. But on this, Like, and again, I don't wish ill will directly on the players. I just think that for once, I don't want to say for once, because running one of the big four sports, you have to take your wins and take your losses. You're not going to win every battle. But me, as a guy who's loved hockey for my entire life, I think Gary Bettman has done more good than harm to the league. He's expanded it. He's done a lot of things, but especially on this, coming out, and somebody in the chat today was like, he didn't say that. He absolutely did say it. He said they are banned from the league. Yeah, yes, the investigation is ongoing, but I love the quote that said he kind of let the cat out of the bag when he said in an interview he would be, this is a quote from him, surprised if these players ever play in the NHL again. Yeah. That was a big quote for him to say, and I think the NHL got it right. I think these guys, they haven't been found guilty of a crime, but like, man, they're free to live their lives. They're free to, like I said, start a business, go into finance, go back to school, become lawyers. They're free to do all those things, even though they made these horrible decisions, which are going to affect this girl for the rest of her life. They are going to affect a lot of people for the rest of their lives. And they're out there walking free. But does that mean like we have to accept them? Like I know we could go through a myriad. We've talked about this on the show. Like, it's hard to put your heroes on a pedestal because one day they're going to disappoint you, either with their opinions or their actions, right? Yeah. And a lot of players, we could go back through the years and put them on trial too and say, this guy did this guy did that, this guy got a DUI, this guy did whatever. Yeah. But I would like to think that this is, I hate to say it in 2025, maybe this is a starting point. Mm-hmm. I mean, the amount of athletes we have who are hockey players in Canada, around the world, who deserve a chance to be in the NHL and could be slotted above these guys. I mean, let's do it.
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, here's the deal. So, like, this, and TSN's reporting it, it's not us. A few hours after the judge's decision, right, the NHL said that Michael McLeod, Carter Hart, Alex Formenton, Dylan Dubé, Calfoot would be ineligible to play while the league reviews the findings. This while the NHLPA is responding that the players should have the opportunity to return to work. The NHL stating, this is the league, stating the allegations in the case were very disturbing, even if not deemed criminal, calling the behavior of the players unacceptable.
That's something
Says
we've never
the
heard.
NHL. No, we'll be reviewing and considering the judge's findings. While we conduct that analysis, the players charged in this case are ineligible to play in the league. Obviously, the NHLPA says we're addressing this dispute with the league. We'll have no further comment at this time. I see Kyle in our live chat saying that the NHL will be sued out of its ass. Like, really? Like, who, buddy? Like,
Batman is
Alex
a lawyer.
Formenton's going to, like, whatever. I'm not going to get that's ridiculous. And you could try. Like, you could go try to sue the National Hockey League and see how far you get. But, like, this isn't even, like, and it's not fair for me to, like, start hypotheticals and naming players. I don't need to. But this is not, like, even a situation like I referenced Michael Vick earlier, right? And Michael Vick, obviously, like, you know, the allegations, the conviction, Michael Vick was also like when it's involving like dog fighting, like anything involving abuse of animals, you know, you're just like there's going to be huge outcry, obviously. But Michael Vick was also like a transcendent NFL quarterback. Yeah. He played the position like very few people have played it, a phenomenal athlete. And there was like real interest to see if he could make it after doing time, by the way, if he could make it back to the NFL and compete. And he did his best to do that. These are fringe. These are players that are like, there's, you know, if it gets down to the debate of whether or not it makes sense for an NHL club, like even if the NHL gives them the green light and declares them eligible to sign a contract, there's no player on that list, respectfully, that to me would make. I know that some people think, well, the Oilers could use goaltending help, so maybe Carter Hart. Carter Hart's like an Alberta boy. He'd be kind of coming home, this, that, and the other. The Oilers have not been nervous, have not shied away from controversial players in past. They brought in Evander Kane. They brought in Corey Perry after he'd been booted out of Chicago. Maybe there's a fit there. Maybe. I don't know. I know that like goaltenders and some journalists in Edmonton, some hockey writers have said emphatically that is not happening. The Oilers are not interested in that. I just have to think like, you know, you as an NHL club would be signing up for so much baggage. Even selling that to your own fans.
Yeah.
You're not bringing in like a 50 goal scorer that's going to like round out your power play and help you win a Stanley Cup.
You said it perfectly there. Like the emphasis would have to be this player is going to make some dramatic impact. So let's say, like you said, Dubé played in the league. I think Formanton.
Dylan Dubé, yeah. Formanton's probably the best player
was
out
the
of all of them.
second one after Hart, who you think maybe could have a career. But taking them on first from a PR perspective, but also rolling the dice. You bring you bring Carter Hart on, and he has a shitty season. Now you're in a whole other world.
He's getting heckled and he's getting
now
booed
you're in a whole Jesus. That would just be crazy. But what I see happening, and especially because I see Bettman, a lawyer, talking like this, and you've never heard him say things kind of definitively like this about players. I think I know they already have him in World Juniors. They definitely have him in the league. Morality clauses in contracts. In the World Juniors, when you play hockey, I believe it's called a good conduct clause that you signed. But I think as lawyers look at this, as Bettman looks at this, those contracts defining morality and good conduct and how you behave, they are going to get a lot more airtighter moving forward after this. It's going to be like one and done. Like if you're involved in a situation like this negates your contract.
Yeah. Justin says, I didn't think I'd say this, but the NHL got something right on this one. Tracy is 100% correct in our live chat powered by Park Power, saying absolutely nobody is entitled to play in the National Hockey League for sure. Emily G says, Johnny, you were absolutely amazing with your comments. Can't be said enough. Let us know what you think on this. Lorraine says the NHL needs to take a strong stance here. What these men did was reprehensible. They need to send a message. The league does. If you want to play here, you better not behave like this. Yeah. Omar Mualim, editor-in-chief of Edify, like he made a comment on the show.
You walked into it.
Well,
yeah.
but like he was not wrong. I know that when Omar said this, I'm not trying to. I fucking love Omar. What a beauty he is. By the way, his new episode of Edify Unfiltered, their new podcast, is out today with me and Dave Cornwallier as the guest, talking about Edmonton's municipal election, if you want to check that out. But Omar, as part of a bigger conversation, said that this should send a message to young athletes and young men, young boys, that if you behave like this, if you act like this, it's really going to hurt your career.
Yeah.
And we got some notes from people that were saying, well, like, what's like, Omar, it's going to hurt your career. What about what about hurting other people? What about hurting human beings? What about, and 100% correct. And I know Omar to be like an incredible, empathetic, kind, wonderful, supportive guy. But he was not wrong in making the statement that he made. Lorraine says the exact same thing. Like, Lorraine even says, continuing, women are the largest growth area for the National Hockey League when you look at fans. Dude, and she says this could cause them to lose a ton of money.
And this is what I'm saying.
Absolutely correct.
Bettman in the league and their lawyers, they know this too. Like, they're almost 40% of the viewership now. Wait till that gets to half. In the last 10 years, they went up 26%. That is a lot more female fans tuning in, and I just see that as part of like Bettman doesn't make, and the NHL, I keep saying Bettman, like there's a room full of men and women who make these decisions. Yep. Very intelligent people. And for them to move forward past 2025, like I said, I think those contracts are going to get airtight, but also like they are considering everyone's views now. It's not just 40-year-old white males watching hockey anymore. And they worked hard over the last 10 years to get the younger viewers, to get the diverse demographics, to move hockey into states in the U.S. and places where you never. Florida Panthers are 2-time NHL champions in a place where there's no ice.
Yeah,
they do not want to lose even a piece of that.
Man, there's a player just drafted.
This is a business.
Just drafted in June out of China.
It's insane.
It's the game is growing. Like you're seeing first rounders come out of the state of California now. You're seeing more Black and Asian players.
100%.
You're seeing players of Indo-Canadian backgrounds. Yeah. That's the sign of a healthy sport.
And
but that's a result of growing the game and prioritizing. And I think that Lorraine and you are making good points about it. I see Seventh Pilot in the chat says, "Oh, I guess so. They're guilty. I guess the judge needs to be fired." You'll notice that no one here is talking about the verdict. No. I'm not going to pretend or purport to know more. We're talking about the business of sport, man. I'm not talking about the verdict. The judge obviously knows more than me. Don't ever listen to my legal opinions. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the fuck I'm talking about. But we're talking about business decisions based on behavior. Yeah. That's like, no player is denying what happened in the room, whether or not it qualified, whether or not it met the burden of proof to reach a guilty verdict. The judge says it didn't, but that, we've said this many times, and I think that it can be summed up simply in one sentence, and that is that not guilty does not equal innocent. And I think that most people, maybe not Seventh Pilot, would agree.
We've been over all of this. Just just put yourself in the room. Put your daughter in the room. It's common sense what happened here was not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
Sharon even said it in her comment, but I agree with you 100%. You are a business-minded guy. I look to Gary Bettman, I look to the league, and as a business, they don't want anything they've worked for to shrink even 1%. So that's why I see these guys never coming in the league.
Yeah, we got a really wonderful note from Marc, who's just like an incredible friend of the show. Marc, with a C, says, I just wanted to commend your entire team about your July 31st episode on the Team Canada players. He says it was a very sensitive subject. He says one that I've been struggling with myself because I've been around those situations in my younger years, and I probably didn't do the right thing. He says, I struggle with the entire boys being boys culture because it's how we were raised in our generation. And I can sometimes look back at those situations through that lens because of my upbringing. He says, but now I'm the father of 2 girls who I want to feel safe and hope that if they're ever in a similar situation, that somebody will be looking out for them. He says, I'm not offering an opinion on this particular matter. I just wanted to send a note that I felt enlightened and educated by Mary Jane and Kristen, your guests, and by the show. He says it was so valuable to me as a father, as an employer, and it just reinforces why I appreciate subscribing to Real Talk. He says, keep it up. So that meant a lot from Marc.
This is why we do this show.
100%.
To get notes like that.
100%.
And the last thing I'll say is just, it's just, you know what, I won't say it, because then our debate will go on too long. It's not our debate.
Did it have to do with aliens coming to Earth?
What would aliens think about the hockey players? No, it just had to do with no, forget it. It's gonna go too long. You know how I stand. You know how Ryan feels. You know what the judge said. You know that the NHLPA is. I can't slight them because their job is to fight for these players. That's literally what their job is.
Yeah, they're the players' union. So
people are like, well, how could the NHLPA? Well, they're literally. To keep their players employed is what they do. So I don't slight anyone in what they're doing, but common sense tells me that these business-minded people who run the league and who have grown it are just saying, you know what? There's more crop of kids coming up. Like what we don't need to fight for these guys who, like you said, 4 out of the 5 probably never going to play again, right?
Yeah. I wanted to wrap with this. Actually, before we get to positive reflections, Cheryl wrote in, and this is might be tough listen for some of you. I really wanted to make sure we read it. The subject line jumped out of our email inbox. That's talk@ryanjespersen.com. How I survived my daughter's sexual assault. So she says, I wasn't sure how much I wanted to be posting in the chat, your live chat, Jespo, just to protect others in case people would maybe recognize my chat handle. Shit.
What happened?
4 sentences in. If you choose to share this, please keep it anonymous. I can't do it.
Okay.
I can't do it. I can't do it.
Then I'll throw in my last point because it's only 30 seconds. But
let me just say, this is this is an incredible email, but I can't. Real Talkers, sometimes these things escape us. Please, sentence number, please, across all caps, bold, please, please keep anonymous right at the top.
But you said her name. Is that the problem?
I said her name, and I'm not going to read it. That's unfair.
We need like a 10-second delay.
And this is all getting cut out of the podcast, so this is why you got to watch on YouTube. This is why you got to watch on YouTube, because you just got to see that on the fly. My apologies to her for that. Yeah. I can't do it.
I'll just say my last thing was like, people keep thinking it's a right to play in this league. It's not. It's a business. You're not entitled to play in the NHL. There are people like you work at Tim Hortons, you work at a law firm. If you don't act a certain way, they can fire you, and that's up to them.
100%. First episode of every week, courtesy of our friends at Solar by Kuby. We have a chance to step outside the news cycle, outside the gut punch, those headlines sometimes that can, discourage us a little bit. We restore our faith in humanity. It's Positive Reflections, proudly presented by our friends at Kuby. And this one, I absolutely love. This is from Jenny C., who wrote in to us following our conversation. This was one of my favorite episodes in a long time. It was the July 30th episode, Tales of the Trans-Canada Highway, with historian Craig Baird. Jenny C says, Jespo, I just wanted to send a quick note for positive reflections. She says, as I was road tripping across the Trans-Canada Highway this week, Johnny, we knew this was going to happen. Remember we said it during, we said we knew it was going to happen. She says, so I was road tripping literally across the Trans-Canada this week, and your interview with Craig Baird couldn't have landed at a better time. Says, I caught the episode at some point between Moose Jaw and Brandon, and it honestly made me look at this road, this Highway 1, with fresh eyes. Jenny says, hearing about the history, check it out. I'm showing it on my screen right now. There's Craig Baird. He's got a brand new book out. Hearing about the history and the vision behind it, the wild stories from over the decades made every stop on that highway feel a little bit more special. She says, I loved the bit when Craig was talking about the highway being a true nation builder. It really hit home as I pulled into Terry Fox's memorial in Thunder Bay. She says, for context, earlier in the week, I grabbed a slice of Saskatoon berry pie in Canmore, and I dipped my toes in Lake Superior by the end of it. She says, just a refreshing change of pace from the usual political grind. She says, not that I don't love the tough conversations on Real Talk, but this one was a celebration of Canada, and I was here for it. I love what she does here. She says,
Here.
She says, thank you for the detour and for always keeping it real. A grateful listener on the road, Jenny C. That was an incredible email. Thank you, Jenny, and safe journey the rest of the way on the Trans-Canada. Make sure you check out that episode with Craig Baird. That was July 30th. Tales of the Trans-Canada Highway. Positive Reflections is proudly presented weekly on Real Talk by our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy. You can get a free solar quote today by visiting Kuby.ca. Coming up on the next episode of the show, we're going to be taking a look at, that Innocence Canada project, wrongfully convicted. A man released from prison. Charges stayed after 30 years. He confessed to the crime, but his advocates always believed in him all the way through. We're going to get into that story, get into that case. Plus, are the Americans actually losing the trade war? Is that actually true? And we're going to talk to John Rapley. He argues yes. Plus, we'll take your questions, your emails. Love your engagement. Thanks for being a part of the show, friends. We'll talk to you again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Harry Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Randy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.